So all day yesterday and this morning I was getting updates on Twitter and Facebook and everyone launching videos or writing articles just talking about the price of the PlayStation VR, the $399 US just for the VR unit itself, not including PlayStation Move controllers and everything else involved with it, just for the VR unit. And everyone is just kind of losing their shit talking about how it's too expensive, there's no way it's going to penetrate the mainstream, and it's more than they were expecting. And this is even people whose opinions I genuinely respect, people who I normally go to talk about ideas like this, who I just don't understand that perspective. New technology, when it comes out, is always incredibly expensive. You know, VHS came out in the 60s, but it wasn't popular until the mid to late 70s because the original players would cost you over $1,000 in 1960s money. Just for inflation, that's insane. Players weren't affordable for about a decade, and even then, home video cassettes, ones that were pre-recorded, actual, like movies that you go and rent, they were way too expensive to actually purchase really until the 80s. That didn't become popular. You were only getting blank tapes to record stuff off TV mostly, and renting tapes, because technology takes time for the price to come down if it is a new leap forward in technology, if it is a new form of technology. If in that sense, it's always expensive. DVD came out in 95, 96, I believe. It wasn't popular at all until the 2000s, large part because of the PS2. That's a pretty big gap there. Laserdisc players were very expensive in the beginning, and eventually the discs themselves would end up being cheaper than VHS. And if you got older players, as time went on, the price came down. It was only higher end players that were too expensive, and you had more affordable consumer models. It's the same with every type of technology. We're not talking about the Virtua Boy here. We're talking about actual VR. And no, obviously it's not, walking into a holodeck. We're not at that point yet. But we are actually at the point finally where we were promised and excited about the idea of virtual reality, virtual world, 3D glasses, that type of thing in the 80s, and it was supposedly coming true in the 90s and the early 2000s, and we're finally at the point where the technology is affordable for the consumer, not at launch, but in general, the technology, it's actually possible to mass produce, mass market VR technology that actually is, in a sense, virtual reality technology. This is still in its infancy, and it's going to take decades before we have something that is truly immersive, but at the stage that it's at, $400 is really not a bad entry price for something that is completely brand new and is a next step in gaming. And it's in its infancy, it's not fully fleshed out. I don't think it's going to take a while, but at the same time, that it makes sense. It's completely logical. I was actually surprised that it wasn't going to be even more than that, and to me it's completely reasonable. Now, do I have $400 to go and spend on VR? No way. If I had $400, it's going to like student loans or something like that. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily that audience, and the audience isn't necessarily just everybody going out this Christmas and buying VR. A lot of people will, but it's really those early adopters, those kind of people that always get like a console at launch, those people that want the next model of graphics card or sound cards, people that go out and buy $3,000 PCs, or that don't know how to customize and make their own. But people that adopted DVD in the mid to late 90s, not waiting till the 2000s. People that got an old like Sony brand, those old top-loading like VCRs, or got into Betamax in the 70s and 80s. Early Laserdisc adopters. Those types of techie people that are willing to shell out the price for brand new tech. I really think within less than 2 years that price is going to drop almost in half. I really think that by the end of 2018, you're going to be looking at a $200 price tag bundled with PlayStation Move and the camera and like a game. It's just how things tend to happen. The technology is expensive at first, and after a while, the cost of the technology comes down, and genuinely with something that's fairly new like this, the cost tends to come down rather rapidly, especially as it slowly gets adopted by a slowly larger and larger audience as time goes on. So the PlayStation VR is not just really an accessory to your PS4. In a way, it's kind of a console in its own right. It's a piece of technology that uses the PlayStation 4, and I really don't think that this is an obscene price tag for this. It's more for most people. It's more than I'm willing to spend on something like that or can afford to, but that's the cost of new technology when it comes. It's just how it is. Just wait a couple of years, see how the technology progresses, what types of uses it has, what kind of games come out for it that aren't just VR compatible but are specifically made for it. Just see how things go and decide down the line how much you're willing to spend on this type of thing. But yeah, this price is not surprising at all. It's surprising to me only in that I thought it would be more, and I don't think it's absurd, and I just don't get the mentality saying that this is too expensive. It really is a logical price point for a new piece of technology. Again, this isn't, you're not putting like 3D glasses on with your Master System. It's not buying a Virtual Boy. It's not that type of thing. It really is the first time we're getting a taste of actual VR.